Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show we're talking about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode, Your Honor. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. We're at the trial part. Obviously, I wonder, did it technically work for their benefit that, well, not really benefit, but obviously the show kind of, I guess maybe things with the pandemic got worse while the show was still in, or at least maybe certain aspects of their production were heavily affected by, like a lot of shows. So for them to kind of answer it, in the sense of like, yeah, because of what's going on, there's only like no, for Michael, he's trying to say like, hey, normally I'd like a lot more transparency when it comes to the trial and everything, but obviously because of everything going down, only the essential people are in here. But I'm wondering, does that technically help benefit him, because it's like less people he has to kind of like play act towards, whereas now it's just the jury and at least even to the lawyers, so it's less people he has to kind of play and kind of convince that he's trying to be quote unquote impartial, when in actuality he's skewing things to a certain extent. But we'll get to that. I even loved how it was kind of sad the way he was playing Sarah, because he's like, yo, if you don't do this whole rehab thing, you could lose, this is a felony, you could lose your judgeship. And she's like, don't you realize what's going on? The cops, Jimmy Baxter, like it's all like, she's saying politicians, the politics of it, and also like, saying that this is kind of a never ending thing. That's why this is so important to her. But Michael convincing her like, oh, you need to, she's like, yeah, no, messed up thing is I was driving so fast because I was trying to get to your surprise party before you. And she even saying like, but the DA won't actually even take this to court. It's like, yeah, but then he shows her video. It's like, yeah, it's going viral. So it's like, this does not, the optics don't look good. So him convincing her like, he's like, I get it. Judges, you're worried that other judges might be compromised as well. There's no judge in here that's not compromised. And she's like, there's one who stands above justice, above more anything else. And just when you hear people praise him for like, yeah, they might, you're all about justice and handling things the right way. And it's like, it just makes you go like, oh, you kind of feel bad, because one point in time, Michael was like that. But now you see like the current situation he's in kind of skewed those, not necessarily morals, but just his convictions, and made him, more, well, he's trying to, well, by saving himself, he's also preventing Jimmy from ever finding out the truth. Because as long as it's all pointed towards me and I'm trying to save myself, I think it never falls back on that. I mean, maybe it is purely self-preservation, but I like to think he's doing it because if I go down, if I die, there's not going to be anything to stop Adam from, well, for one, Adam will be on his own, but also if anything ever comes up later on, it all kind of will go towards Adam, and he won't be there to protect Adam. So I think that'd be the justification. But hey, you could also look at it as self-preservation in regardless of, whether it really is about Adam or not. I'd like to believe it's about Adam, but it could just be like, I don't want to die, so I'm trying to save my own skin. So, but that's what makes this court stuff so intriguing, is him trying to pretend like he's all on the prosecutor's side, because like, obviously with the mountain of evidence against Carlo, like her opening statements bringing up the fact is that he's a racist, breaking it down to nature, motive, and opportunity. And it's like when you break all those things down to meet, you're like, yeah, like Carlo had all of those, and at least like who his nature is, like him being racist that he is. And it's like obviously the lawyers end are trying to like spin things to be like, oh, defense, this was his home, Kofi stepped into his home. But even like Fiona had earlier been like, oh, you mean the kid that's like what, 5'5", 5'6", and like 40 pounds less than him? But it's like, oh, but look at Xander's like, look, he came into his home, which I thought that was so fascinating. It's like, you can't use the word home, like apparently, like legally speaking, you can't refer to like a jail or a cell as home. And he's almost like, I'm not saying it in a literal sense, I'm saying it more so in a metaphorical sense. So I'm like, I guess the technicality behind it all. But it's like their opening statements, and I love that because Fiona ain't letting up one bit, and he was just like, Your Honor. And even him, and what I thought was fascinating too is learning that Xander doesn't know that Michael was like connected to all this, because he was like, man, this judge, could he be more obvious as being pro-prosecutor? Because he doesn't know. I mean, I guess it makes sense because the less people that know. So I'm sure even Cusack doesn't know, because it's like, this is the only people that know about this might be Gina, she might know. I don't know if Jimmy talked to her about it. Like, Jimmy's right-hand dude, wasn't it Frankie? Like, he might be the only one who knows about Michael. Even Gina might not know. We'll see. At least where the episode presented itself didn't really show that she necessarily knew. But, I mean, it makes sense. Like, you want to keep this tight-knit circle, especially considering the fact that Cusack has already got both Lee and Nancy looking at him. Because Nancy's like, whoa, Cusack was the last person to talk. Oh, no, Lee was like, Cusack was the last person to talk to Kofi after, like, the others had already kind of roughed him up. And it's like, oh, yeah, those are part of his crew. And it's like, she's like, yep, he's under Jimmy's thumb. And she's like, really? And it's like, yeah, Nancy's got her suspicions, granted. She presents this to Michael, but Michael's like, we need to come at this with evidence. It's like, because it comes up in court, too, because Fiona plays the recording. It's like Jimmy knew ahead of time that Carlo was going, and Michael's like, do you know who it was? It's like, no, not yet. But it's like, maybe, so it's like, there's no way Jimmy would know because he's not a cop. So how would he know that people were coming to get Carlo ahead of time? So it's kind of, but it's like, that's kind of beside the point. We're focusing on Carlo's trial right now. That's kind of another separate point. Granted, Michael's saying that just to save his own hide because it's like, all right, I got another damn thing I got to deal with, So that doesn't look, I mean, granted, no one knows because, I mean, luckily for him, Nancy is associating with Cusack. Granted, Cusack is working for Jimmy, so it leans to allowing him to be more of the fall guy in this situation. So we'll see kind of how that ends up playing out. Whether does Jimmy end up asking Cusack to kind of take the fall just so he can like keep Michael in the position he is overlooking the trial, but that trial is not going Carlo's way. At one point in time, I forgot. I want to say I forgot at what point during the trial, Carlo had this like smug smile on his face, and you can tell like one of the jurors, like, because Michael was kind of focusing on her specifically the entire trial, the older black lady. It's like, yeah, you can tell definitely where she's leaning. And with the whole Carlo thing, but like at one point in time, he was kind of smug about kind of like, oh yeah, we got the upper hand, and he's smiling, and you can see her looking at him. It's like, you smug bastard. Like, you want to at least act solemn about it. Hell, Fiona tore him a new one at the beginning, being like, oh, he's saying, well, he can't deny that he wasn't there or that he didn't do it. All he can say is it was self-defense. It's kind of like showing you like the guilty of it, that he's only going the self-defense route because he can't literally deny the other two facts in this situation. So that kind of like puts a little bit of a nail in a coffin with his circumstances. Oh, right, I remember what the circumstances were that kind of made him kind of get a little smug, was because Cusack was on the stand talking about the fact is that Kofi was just eating a bacon sandwich afterwards. Granted, he didn't know there was a body on the car, so that's why he was just like, oh, I'm just stealing a car. Like, that's why he was so nonchalant. He's like, but, Cusack's painting it like, yeah, it's kind of messed up. He had to like, oh, he had nothing wrong. He had done nothing wrong when, in fact, he had just run over Rocco and acted like it was nothing. And this, obviously we know the context of the situation, but obviously it pissed Eugene off and he bounced. And that's what Carlo was. I was trying to remember what it was, but that was what Carlo was kind of smug about. Like, but then like also Justin got on the stand and was like, oh yeah, what happened to me? My spine got fucked up. They had to fuse it together, but he was like, it didn't go fix it all the way. So like now my balance forever effed up. And it's like, why did he do that to you? He's like, just being black, and it's like he curb stomped him and everything. It's like, Jesus, and then like almost Jimmy and Gene are almost like, and Carlos just like, shit, because it's like they are getting screwed over in this situation, rightfully so, because Carlos a piece of shit. But I love Michael's like, damn it, how do I work this situation? He's like, oh, you got scars from what happened to you, right? No, don't worry, none of us are going to keep you up here long. I'm sure Mr. Xander's not going to keep you up here. I was, but that scar right there, is that from the surgery? He's like, no, it's like, oh, it's from like a tattoo. Oh, okay. And a moment Michael pointed that out, and then Xander kind of poked his head up. It's like, okay. Michael kind of gave him the leeway, and it's like, what's that? And it's like, yeah, it's a D. Oh, so you were part of Desire. Oh, okay. So he's trying to paint it as like, oh, this was that type of situation. But Fiona sure as hell quickly flipped that to be like, what happened in the case? It's like, oh, so Carlo was convicted. And what did he say? He said, oh, he was not guilty. And it was self-defense, huh? The same situation with Kofi, yet he got prosecuted. I mean, he was found guilty under those circumstances, huh? I was like, dude, Michael tried to give you an alley-oop and Fiona just smacked that shit out of the way, dude. That was amazing. It kind of sucks when it's like he's on the wrong side of this situation. He's like, damn it. Once again, he's trying to be impartial, but obviously, like, he knows. We all know. He literally has an uphill battle because it's like literally everything proves that Carlo is guilty, and it's like, how do I swerve this how do I make Jimmy's coming after me, especially because Jimmy gave him a time limit. It's like, oh yeah, you have until like 10 a.m. Like you have basically like, what, it was like 24 hours or something, basically, essentially. But I loved Michael breaking it down, being like, whoa, that jury, he's like, basically, I got it all under control. The jury, to me, they're looking at me like I'm their dad. They need me to be there to guide them, to show them kind of like, that I'm there for them, presenting the evidence that they want to hear, that they believe they need to hear. And he's like, basically he's saying, I'm stringing them along. And then eventually, when it comes down to it, when we hit the right moment in the case, I'm basically going to take control of things. I'm going to make them do what I want them to do. And it's like, in moments like that, and it's like, once again, you can't help it, but you're like, I see a little bit of that Walter White coming out in those moments when he's standing up to Jimmy. It's almost like, no. It's like, it's almost like any time there was like a Gus and a Walt scene in Breaking Bad, it's very similar to that between Jimmy and Michael, and it's just like almost being like, so don't worry about, I got this. And Jimmy's like, all right, you got a time limit. It's your deadline. And I mean that literally. And it's like every time you turn around, like, because obviously Michael earlier in the episode was in the courtroom, and I was almost scared. I was like, please, Jimmy, don't pop out of nowhere and be talking to Michael because Nancy's going to look at that a certain way. But Jimmy was waiting on the other side. Michael just like scurried back inside, and as Jimmy was walking forward, Nancy was like, oh, so you lost your way? And he's like, oh. And he's like, who are you? She's like, Detective Nancy Costello. And she spelled it out for him too. And I'm like, oh boy. Then on top of that, you had that whole conversation between Eugene and Lee, where it's for him, it's like I don't need you to have my back, like, because obviously the trial isn't going the way he wants, especially because he's like, people are painting my brother a certain way, like obviously saying like, oh, he ran over someone, like saying like, it's Cusack's words hit Eugene, because obviously it's like he don't want no one talking about his big brother like that, painting him as this like monster or something. But Lee was saying like, I can help you, navigate the system. I can be there with you. And he's like, wait, Little Mo is getting me money every week and you offer me the system? Really? And it's like, Lee should have known that wasn't going to work in that regard. Because it's just like, there can be horror stories in the system, And so it's like, you're offering me that, the same system that screwed him and his family over, that led his brother to be in the situation that he's in. But, Lee's like, oh, so you're saying, fuck me, really? Like, you saying that makes you just like him, but you're better than him, referencing Carlo, so. But they were having a whole conversation about the baseball, and it's like, oh, where'd you get that? I don't know, Kofi had it, and it's like, oh, boy. And Lee's looking at it, because part of me wonders, has Lee seen it before? But then she gives it to Michael later on, and it's like, oh, I want you to sell it for me, and I'm like, or at least for Eugene's sake. And I was like, so she probably recognizes, but she isn't 100% sure. Funny how it ultimately ended up back in Michael's pocket anyway. So I guess it kind of worked out to a certain extent. Same while all this is going down, Franny's like, yo, so Adam, here's this picture. I figured you would want it because it was like a thing of his mom where she would take pictures of people. He explains the whole thing to Theo. It was actually kind of an interesting thing, but we'll get to that in a second. But I love she being like, yeah, so there's plenty of like, high schools I could teach at NY, and it's like, hey, you're going to be 18, so no one's going to say anything because you will no longer be my student. He's like, but I haven't been accepted to NY. I'm like, you're lying, aren't you? And then hard cut to the scene of Michael being like, oh my God, he got accepted to NY. So it's like, right, interesting. Because sadly, he doesn't feel the same way about Franny anymore, so... And you can almost see the look on her face like, wait, what? I've literally thrown away my entire life so I could be with you. I quit this job. And it turns out, he's like, yeah, but it's like, he doesn't feel the same way about her anymore. Like, that love for her, it's diminished. And in a twisted way, regardless of the situation, he's fallen for Fia. I guess just because this tragedy brought them together, but they're both kind of effed up in their own way. Her because of Rocco, him about his mom, plus what he did to Rocco. So, once again, it just makes him, it comes off, there is a demented sweetness to it, is what I should say. Like, their relationship, but it's also, like, built off of lies and fucked up means of keeping a secret. All of this stemmed from that one situation with Adam accidentally killing Rocco. It was an accident, but because of everything playing out, just like so much suffering has come from that situation. So it makes this even more, the whole him and Fia thing, that much more fucked up. But what I was bringing up earlier was like the whole thing of like the picture. He was like, my mom would basically hand people like pictures that she randomly took of them without knowing. People would be pissed, but then she'd take time to sit down and talk to them. And for her, that's how she got to really know this city. And she kind of passed that on to him. He's like, when he was younger, he used to be embarrassed by it. But his mom told him that like, that's how you go deep, not wide when it comes, and because of that, now he kind of loves this city and he kind of doesn't want to leave just because I think all the memories attached to it, he kind of sees the city that way. And also, this is where Fia is, which even have Michael, well, when Adam was with them all together celebrating, oh, I got an NY, he's like, I think I might stay here. Michael's almost like, you what? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, so you're going to go, he's like, oh, you want to take a gap here? Sure. You're going to go abroad, right? He's like, no, I think I'm going to stay here. Like Mom said, deep, not, no deep, not wide. And Michael just got that look on his face like, you know what I'm doing for you, son. You know everything I'm doing. You know Jimmy lives in this city, right? You know this isn't going to work out you just staying here. So he inadvertently goes to Franny like, hey, can you convince him? Because I kept wondering, like, during the scene, I was like, does he know that Adam and Franny are a thing or were a thing? I wasn't sure. But then she's finding out, wait, he lied? He got into NYU? Wait, what? Then we see her later on skulking and sees Adam with Fia. Granted, she sees Fia from behind, but I'm like, oh, shit. If she finds out that Fia is who Fia is, I'm curious to see what that does. It's like, oh, shit. The ex is scorned right now. It's like, wait, you left me for someone else. Once again, I sacrificed everything to be with you, which is also like, well, you're also the teacher having a relationship with a student, I think it depends on the states because states are weird like that. Some places it's younger, some places older. But I would assume, I could be wrong. I'd assume since they're also hiding it, because it's not just also because he's a student, it's also because he is underage. So I'm assuming New Orleans is one of those places like 18 is the limit. Well, she did make a point, but I was also wondering if it was just because it was more so like she was his teacher and him being in high school. But it is the age thing. It is like, so 18 is the age of consent, I think, in New Orleans just based on the conversation. So it's like, it's like, I'm wondering, is she coming from this because like I threw everything away from you and this is what you do to me, or like I love you and you broke my heart. Her knowing the truth from the beginning, I was like, that's going to come back to bite him in the ass. And it seems like now that she knows, like, oh, you got someone else on the side, like you're with someone else, it's going to come back in some way. I'm curious to see how the hell she's going to react. Because the last thing you want is the person who knows the truth to be heartbroken, because she might go a little ballistic and start spewing the truth. We'll see. I was actually halfway expecting, like, because now Fia knows about, it's definitely coming back. They're setting that up, that inhaler thing. They're setting it up because now Fia knows that Adam needs an inhaler. But the thing is, the reason why I'm also bringing that up, it's because he was in the courtroom and Michael was like, don't show all the pictures. And she's like, they need to see what had happened. Like, but it's like Michael more so, he's like, I'm trying to protect the jury. More so than anything, it's because Adam showed up and he didn't want Adam to see what happened to Kofi, but he saw enough pictures. It's like, he didn't want Adam. It wasn't about protecting the jury. It was about, well, I'm sure this kind of works to his case by like pulling away the pictures, but more so than anything, it's prevent Adam from feeling even more guilty about it. But I was almost halfway expecting like Adam to kind of have an asthma attack and then like pump his inhaler and Jimmy be there to be like, wait, what? It's going to happen. I just know it. At some point, Jimmy's going to be around him when he uses the inhaler and he's going to piece it together like, shit, it wasn't Michael. It was his boy. Everything he's done is to protect his boy. And, to some extent, I think Jimmy can, understand that. Like, Jimmy do anything to protect his kid. So if fathers, need to protect his son, he's like, I totally get it. So I think whether that's going to sway Jimmy or not later on, I don't know. That might be that might be enough to sway things in Michael's favor. We'll have to wait and see. But it's like, I was expecting that. But, yeah. Fiona owned that scene too by being like basically like getting home dude to break down what happened. It's like Kofi's injuries is basically, it's like, oh, his skull was broken. It's like basically there were fragments from the wall, and it's like basically like the wall is smooth. there's nothing like jagged about the wall that like when his head went against it, like it's like, no, you'd have to use a shit ton of force to literally break enough of the concrete from that wall to be embedded in his skull. And it's like, how many blows? 6. And then she's like, oh, so he was grabbing him by his hair like this, and then she slams the thing 6 times to make a point. It's like, that's what he did to Kofi. And it's like, that alone, not even, that's enough to cement it right there. And it's just like, shit. Once again, you see Michael just kind of sweating. He's like, damn it. Especially because Jimmy hit him up. Hey, 16 hours, bro. So it's like, damn. So things aren't working out the way Michael was kind of hoping they would. I mean, maybe he still got that final. Well, his play this time was like, he knew he had to get one-on-one juror who was like super set on what she believed. And that was the lady, and he basically was like, can I see your phone? She's like, who ratted me out? Was it juror number 8? And he types in KO, and Kofi Jones comes up. She's like, someone's setting me up. Someone did this. And she's like, I could go out there in front of all those reporters and stuff like that. He's like, sit down. He's like, do you have a daughter? She's like, do you have a child? And she was like, yes, I have a daughter. And it's like, you know, they're the most important thing. And she was like, I'm not going to be basically threatened or pushed. She's like, I know what's going on here. For him, it's like, I know where you're leaning. He's like, I knew pretty much since like day one, and I'm never wrong about this. He's like, you go home to your daughter. This trial doesn't need you. Trust me, it's going to go the way you want to, because they're going to get a new juror. Most likely this juror is going to be someone that they put in place to make sure that they're a little more leaning towards Carlo. But it also might be that it might not be a thing of, hey, you're getting someone that's more pro Carlo. It might just be like getting someone that isn't anti Carlo. I think it's at the very least. But because I think if you get someone, she's the most anti Carlo, so if you can get someone else out there, you know, you can puppeteer it and kind of sway the jury the way you kind of want to. But yeah, it's kind of sad when you break down the fact is that he's like, you can tell how disheartened he is by being like, yeah, Carlo's going down, and he got that look on his face like, oh, I'm saying that, but I know that's not the truth. For my sake, he better not go down, you know? So that's dude, this case is going to get more and more interesting, especially considering, hey, we're down to the last 2 episodes, and there's still plenty of room for some curveballs to be thrown our way with this situation, whether it be curveballs from Michael, extenuating circumstances, considering, like, especially because everyone's got their eyes on this situation. Because, like, Nancy knows, like, whoa, Jimmy's paying a lot of attention to this. I mean, to be fair, he's also in the courtroom. Also, Elizabeth saw Carlo at the restaurant that they were at, and she was like, I saw him here earlier when I was rolling up, and he was like, you're being paranoid, blah, blah, blah. Like, Michael's trying to put her at ease, but I'm sure she's not going to let that go, considering, obviously, she knows all there is to know about Jimmy. It's like, there's just so much. And we still don't know what the hell Big Mo is going to do. Like, I mean, because she made a whole point to be like, let Carlo know that even in jail, he's still not getting away from what he owes me. Whatever she's got planned, that's probably still in the works, whatever that ends up being. There's still so many moving pieces. 2 episodes, a lot of shit could happen, and I cannot wait to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.